His story's told in the Gangster Chronicles, February 12th. Parental discretion advised.
I'm on. With interest checks, your money's earning interest, and banking will never be the same, because interest checks have to pay you interest. Otherwise, they'd have to change the name. I'm off.
Breaking for lunch?
Yep, we're having good Kentucky Fried Chicken.
It really feels good getting so much of a meal for the money.
And here's something else to feel good about.
Visit the Colonel Monday and Tuesday and enjoy the Big Chicken Feed. 12 delicious pieces of chicken with all the trimmings for just $6.89. The Big Chicken Feed. No coupon needed.
So nice to feel so good about a meal, so good about Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Hey, Charlie, this fella told me some of these other herbicides about as good as Treflan.
Is that so?
Fella said so.
Now, this fella read all them labels.
Huh?
Well, most of them other labels call for higher rates on the soil around here.
This fella said he just put it on the same rate as Treflan.
Oh, and this other fella, how'd he do?
Oh, well, he... Oh, shoot, Charlie. I'm going to go back to Treflan.
Yep.
Treflan from Elanco.
No doubt about it.
This is WSFA, TV 12, Montgomery.
From Alabama's News Center, this is the WSFA TV News 12 o'clock report.
Good afternoon, I'm Gina Gregory. The 1981 legislative session is about to begin at the state capitol. Lawmakers have already convened. Now let's go live to House Speaker Joe McCorkadale for the opening gavel.
House come to order. We'll be led in prayer today by the Reverend Ben Sawada. Real happy to have Ben today. He's a former pastor down in Clark County. Did a great job, very popular. Ben, it's good to have you with us today.
Thank you. Let us pray. How good it is and how thankful we are, O Lord, that we live in a time and in a country where we can pause in prayer for such an important occasion as this. We ask for thy special blessings upon these governmental leaders, upon their function and upon their deliberations. Grant clarity of mind and compassion of heart. Grant conviction. Grant courage. We pause to give special thanks, O Lord, for the many blessings of the recent weeks related to the homecoming of our fellow citizens. We thank thee. We also thank thee for the expressions of love to country and for the prayers that were lifted up in thy name. Help us all to love our country and express it properly. Help us all to know our dependence upon thee and to express that. Again, bless this body, bless our state and every citizen in it. Amen.
What you've just seen is the 1981 session of the Alabama legislature now coming into session. And you've just watched House Speaker Joe McCorkadale gavel in the House of Representatives. And just across the hall, Lieutenant Governor George McMillan is bringing the Senate into session. The lawmakers have some awfully tough decisions to make during the next 105 days. That's the duration of this regular session. And many of those major issues hinge around money, or in the state of the case, or in the case of the state, the lack of money.
Because the economy is sluggish, consumers tend to spend less money. That means taxes slow down. The state didn't expect taxes to drop as they have, and by drop, we mean taxes this year will bring in more revenue than last year, but just barely 1% or 2% more. And in inflationary times, the state is also in a financial bind. The Department of Mental Health and the state prison system are under federal court orders. Legislators will have to consider the large budget request from those agencies. And the Special Education Trust Fund, which finances education, is also failing to grow as expected. Lisa Nielsen has a look at some of the problems that are connected with the Special Education Trust Fund.
For the past several months, local school systems, colleges, and universities have been operating on 7% less money than the legislature appropriated. Now the governor has has increased that cut to 10%. The reason is that the Special Education Trust Fund has grown by only 2.8% so far this year, and full funding would have required an 11.5% growth. The state budget officer says the reason for the slow growth is that Christmas sales were low this year. For the first time in at least 13 years, the amount of sales tax money taken in the first 4 months of this year was less than for the same period last year. Those bleak revenue figures will likely play a large role in the governor's address to the legislature this evening. Chris Grimshaw and I will be back with live reports at 6, and then at 6:30, WSFA will broadcast the governor's State of the State address. Gina?
Thanks, Lisa. Former Prattville City Clerk Donald Kelly today was sentenced to 5 years in prison.
Good evening, I'm Bob Howell, and this is the news for Tuesday, the 3rd day of February, 1981. There's a lot of activity tonight at the state capitol with the return of the House and Senate members for the first day of the 1981 regular session. At this moment, the lawmakers are a half hour away from hearing the State of the State address by Governor James, which we will carry live at 6:30. Earlier today, reporter Chris Grimshaw was at the Capitol for the opening of the session.
The first day of the 1981 legislative session is mostly formality. At noon, both the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate gavelled in their respective houses into session. The first items of business included resolutions to notify the other house that they were in session, and a resolution inviting the governor to speak tonight, and then a resolution calling for a joint session of the two houses so the governor will have an audience of representatives and senators to talk to. The problems facing the legislators this year are great in number, but the common denominator between them all is money. During the past year, a group of interim legislative committees have been probing some of those problem areas, such as mental health, prisons, education, all of which claim great need for additional money this year. Most of those interim committees have also faced time problems, saying they have not collected all of the information they need to make decisions, especially on proposed mental health bond issue and what to do with prisons and education. And any decision on any major issue isn't traditionally reached without a long and sometimes confusing debate. And as legislators are faced with the unpleasant task of cutting back on state spending this year, those debates will likely be a constant part of the 1981 session.
Among the many solutions that the legislature will be debating during this session are those offered by Governor James. He's now into his 3rd year in office. He has several sessions under his belt as well as some experience. And faced with a long list of state problems, he'll tell the representatives and senators tonight in his State of the State address what solutions he intends to propose. Lisa Nielsen has been keeping up with the situation and has a look at what the governor has been talking about recently and what he might be expected to say in his speech tonight.
Last year, Governor James spent much of his State of the State address talking about the need for a new gasoline tax to help the Highway Department. The tax passed. And although the economy is considered to be in worse shape this year, Governor James has indicated he doesn't want any new taxes this session. One of the governor's major concerns is the plight of education in the state. He has talked about consolidating programs in higher education and establishing a board of regents to replace the Commission on Higher Education. Governor James was expected to ask legislators to pass a proposed $90 million mental health bond issue, but some legislators say James wants to hold off on the issue at least for a little while. The Mental Health Department wants the money for improvements required by a federal court order. Also under court order is the prison system. The governor has given his okay for Prison Commissioner Robert Britton to ask for a supplemental appropriation this year and another increase next year. Governor James will probably ask all other departments to tighten their belts. That could include a decrease in state holidays and probably no pay raises. So unless the governor comes up with some extra dollars, his message will probably carry a conservative theme.
Thank you, Lisa Nielsen and Chris Grimshaw live at the state capitol. Again, we will be originating and broadcasting Governor James' State of the State address live beginning at 6:30 this evening. When we come back, a Montgomery woman is kidnapped and beaten.
So that is
George Mitchell, WSFA TV News, Dallas County.
And that is it for tonight's 6 o'clock report of news, sports, and weather for February 3rd, 1981. Right now, we're standing by to go live to downtown Montgomery to the state capitol building, where Alabama Governor Fob James is about to be presented to a joint session of the Alabama House and Senate members. This, of course, for his annual State of the State address. And now let's go live to the Alabama House chambers for Governor James' State of the State address.
Live from the state capitol in Montgomery, Alabama, the State of the State address to the Alabama legislature by Governor Fob James.
Hey, Bob, give me my cigarette lighter. Give me my cigarette lighter.
Ladies and gentlemen, the joint session of the legislature is now in order. The doorkeeper will admit the governor and his party. Members of the House, members of the Senate, I present to you His Excellency, the Honorable Fob James, Governor of the State of Alabama.
Mr. Speaker, Governor McMillan, distinguished members of the House and Senate, ladies and gentlemen, first I want to extend a very warm welcome to the legislature and their staffs as you return to Montgomery for this regular session that I believe with all my heart is going to be a very special session. Secondly, I want to take this opportunity to say to members of my cabinet that I am grateful for forward movement on your part on a broad front, and you're gaining momentum every day. Thirdly, I want to express my heartfelt thanks to Bobby James for a very special partnership that is my personal cabinet. This is the year 1981. This is a year grassroots America spoke loud from Alabama to New York to California and said to all of us in government at every level, get our house in order and get it in order now. I gather from the tone of your comments during budgeting committee hearings, you come here to look hard reality in the eye without blinking, to act within the perimeter of economics, not political economics, to act within the framework of logic and common sense, not expediency, to act within the boundaries of a defined philosophy, not to drift on the broad expanse of political whim and emotion. I applaud and appreciate you who take this direction. There's no better place to begin than by discussing tax dollars, money taken by law from hard-earned paychecks. Over 80% of the total revenue of the state of Alabama comes from earmarked taxes. From taxes that year in and year out are restricted to the same bureaucracy, no matter how inefficient it becomes, and no matter how genuine the need for revenue in other areas. I say this practice of earmarking state taxes is against the public interest, and I say it without equivocation. I believe in the Alabama legislature. The legislature has a responsibility to judge the ever-changing needs of the people and to appropriate tax revenue accordingly. This is impossible with over 80% of Alabama's total tax revenue locked in from earmark taxes. Earmarking is, in fact, a form of taxation without representation. Earmarking is a major cause of Alabama's financial problems. Let me cite you two major examples. The first, in a number of years during the last 2 decades, the Alabama Special Education Trust Fund enjoyed large surpluses due to the high growth of earmark taxes. The surplus funds were used to expand higher education to a level far exceeding our realistic needs. We have one 4-year institution for every 230,000 people. The national average is one 4-year institution for every 400,000 people. We are 7th in the nation in gross dollars spent on medical education. We are 46th by any other economic barometer you wish to apply. The number of 2-year schools in Alabama exceeds that of most other states, including many states with populations larger than ours. They are duplications of programs in higher education from one end of this state to the other, and everybody in this room knows it. The waste and overexpansion has cost Alabama taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. I say to the taxpayers, blame this long-term extravaganza at your expense on earmark taxes. Some of you have told me you would support unearmarking if you could see how the people would benefit. Well, in this education budget I have submitted for next year, there is a $24 million reduction in the amount of money proposed for higher education. You have at your disposal an itemization of these reductions, and I say to you, higher education can improve its quality on my proposed budget. This is right for the students. I have proposed an increase of $34 million for grades K through 12. The people will benefit. We have declining enrollment at all levels of education. We need very few, if any, new buildings on our college campuses. We have, within the last 3 months, released $60 million to build schools for grades K through 12. And we will release another $30 million as soon as the bond market improves. You all know local support for schools is not what it should be in some areas, thereby placing a heavy, disproportionate burden on state tax revenue. Under United States federal court order, your Revenue Department is in the process of making property appraisals uniform and fair for all citizens. The results of this work will mean an increase of $81 million for county governments and $19 million for city governments in late 1982. There is no reason the great bulk of this new money should not go to the local school systems of this state. I fully expect our economy to regain its vitality in a year or two. And with this, one can expect 9 to 12% growth in the Alabama Special Education Trust Fund. One is unrealistic not to expect surpluses to reappear, and one is even more unrealistic not to expect these surpluses to be spent wherever needed or not if we continue earmarking. The second, any department of government receiving earmark taxes is somewhat insulated from legislative scrutiny through the budgetary process. The budget is the one tool you have to discipline the bureaucracy and ensure that the people receive the services for which they are taxed. Earmarking totally disarms the legislature in this respect, as an earmarked department of government has no incentive to save, only to spend. I have witnessed firsthand the results of earmarking in the Highway Department. 200,000 employees too many in January 1979. In the Mental Health Department, a brand new $7.5 million maximum security hospital in Tuscaloosa still standing empty. Both the Highway Department and the Mental Health Department receive earmark taxes. The Department of Corrections receives no earmark taxes, and we have today over 1,400 state prisoners in city and county jails, and the federal courts are threatened to let the dangerous criminals out on the streets. Besides all of that, we are the only state in America that earmarks a great majority of our taxes. You have one of three choices: either unearmark and get our house in order, pass new taxes, or reduce essential services. I ask you to allow the people of Alabama to vote on this issue in a referendum to be held in the primary election of 1982. And in the meantime, why not stand tall and statutorily unearmark everything under this roof in the days ahead? Some years ago, the Alabama legislature decided to meet every year rather than every other year, perhaps as evidence to support the wisdom of this move. However, I strongly believe the legislature and people will be far better served if we return to biannual budgeting. I give these reasons. The budget year in and year out is the most important business of the legislature. When you throw the budget into the midst of hundreds of other pieces of legislation, the budget can be held hostage, leveraged, and an orderly, constructive analysis of all elements within the budget becomes very difficult. 2, the budget is one document the legislature and the public ought to understand in depth and in detail. This takes plenty of time, so we need to isolate the budget in order to ensure legislative scrutiny and public understanding. It is not true that annual budgeting makes for a more accurate projection of income and expense. Our record speaks for itself on projecting income annually. And in government, we have no sales or inventory to project, mostly payroll cost, and this can be done biannually. It is not true that biannual budgeting would keep the state from reacting to a crisis such as Hurricane Frederick. A supplementary appropriation can be made to address a specific crisis in any given year. In Florida, Governor Bob Graham led the charge away from biannual budgeting in 1970 when he served in the legislature, and 9 years later led the charge back to biannual budgeting. Governor Graham told me the best thing he has ever done or ever would do for the Florida taxpayer was to return the state of Florida to biannual budgeting. Therefore, I recommend that the legislature budget for 2 years, every first and third year, and that no other business except local legislation be addressed until the budgets are passed. I ask you to allow the people of Alabama to vote on this issue in a referendum to be held primary election 1982. A great majority of Alabama state employees do their jobs well. They deserve the gratitude of the people of Alabama and have earned the heartfelt appreciation of this administration. On the other hand, personnel costs are 80% of the total cost of government. You and I share this responsibility, and there is no way we can meet this responsibility without making a fair and comprehensive assessment of these costs. On salaries and wages, it is my desire for all state employees to receive salaries and wages that are competitive to salaries and wages paid in the private sector for the same work. This is fair to the state employee and to taxpayers. This is not the case in Alabama today. Average current pay levels for state employees is 8% higher than the average current pay for employees within the private sector and local governments of Alabama. This information was obtained from a cross-section of employers throughout the state, representing over 250,000 employees. It should be noted, a majority of the complaints of the companies responding to the survey were the larger firms. They are in the top category of the private sector with respect to employee compensation. It should also be understood that the 8% high average pay for state employees indicate that some state job classifications are high and that some are low. The state merit system includes 4 different pay raises that are given by the administration. Last year, over 60% of our employees received such raises. Obviously, if the legislature mandates a pay raise on top of the existing pay raises already in the system, inequities are locked in and compounded for another year. I believe this is a serious mistake. I am therefore recommending that the legislature, by joint resolution, instruct the governor and the personnel board to adjust the basic pay of each job classification within the merit system to a level competitive to the private sector within the state of Alabama. In situations where state job classifications are unique to the public sector, we should adjust to a level competitive to the average level of pay within our 12 sister southern states. I welcome a legislative oversight committee to work with us on this project. Job classifications that are determined to be high should be held level for the period of time necessary to bring these classifications into line. And job classifications that are determined to be low should be increased to the proper level. These adjustments should be made effective October 1, 1981. On state holidays, the state of Alabama gives 13 legislative holidays. These holidays do not include Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, or Friday after Thanksgiving. However, it is customary for the governor to declare these days state holidays, as is the case with most Alabamians. I and all other governors have done this. All total, there are 15 to 16 state holidays annually, compared with an average 9 to 10 holidays given annually by employers within the private sector of Alabama. Conversely, several state holidays are not observed at all by a large majority of Alabama citizens. It is wrong for the state to give 50% more holidays, especially if all other elements of employee compensation is competitive. Therefore, I recommend reducing state holidays from 16 to 12. On sick leave and vacation leave, I will recommend that our existing schedules be brought into line with the private sector. However, any sick leave or vacation leave benefits earned prior to October 1, 1981 will be fully retained. On life insurance and long-term disability insurance, the state of Alabama provides neither. This is not only wrong, it is a non-competitive personnel policy. Therefore, I am recommending that the state provide, at no cost to the employee, life insurance benefits 1 to 2 times the employee's annual base salary at time of death. I am also recommending that we provide disability insurance for all state employees in order to protect them against loss of income from sustained injury or illness. On hospitalization and medical insurance, the state provides coverage for the employee only. I'm of the opinion that coverage can be improved and perhaps expanded. On retirement benefits, the state of Alabama substantially exceeds retirement benefits provided by the other 49 states, and also substantially exceeds retirement benefits provided by over 90% of the employers within the private sector. The contributions from taxpayers to the Alabama retirement systems for the fiscal year 1981-82 would be $253 million. This does not include Social Security. When you combine Social Security paid by the state in the amount of $111 million, you have a grand total of $364 million. This is about 17.5% of total state taxes and other income the state of Alabama can use for employee compensation. Money for the retirement fund is paid off the top before one state service is rendered. The present situation is not sound, because if the state continues to increase its payments into the retirement fund, the state, not the retirement fund, will either go broke, cut services, or raise taxes. Another danger is that the retirement benefits already earned by thousands of dedicated state employees and teachers will be jeopardized. It is unfair to state employees and taxpayers alike to continue this trend. Therefore, I have retained the White Company of Dallas, Texas, and Winklevoss and Associates of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to evaluate our retirement programs. These two consultants are experts in the retirement field, and I have asked them to present their findings to a joint session of the legislature on Tuesday, February 17 at 2 p.m. They will be here for 3 days following to answer your questions in detail. After receiving the facts, I will recommend that the legislature make the necessary adjustments to ensure the integrity of the retirement fund and provide all teachers, state employees, and judges with a competitive retirement program. This will have no effect whatsoever on retirement benefits earned prior to October 1, 1981. Our public schools are among the first order when we ask what are the essential services of government. You will appropriate this year $750 million to 127 public school systems. It is by far the largest appropriation you make, and it should be. The State School Board is a vehicle created by the legislature to manage from the state level our public school system. You have every right to demand performance in each and every one of our school systems and to know exactly how your taxes are being utilized. I can say for the first time in this state's history, our children have met the national average on the basic skills achievement tests. And I thank thousands of dedicated teachers, support personnel, principals, and superintendents for their good work. This is one small step in the right direction, realizing national averages have been declining for a number of years, and that averages are a poor substitute for sure knowledge of whether an individual child is learning or not. You're the first legislature ever to have at your disposal information that clearly shows the following 6 conditions. Number 1, how the school system or systems in your district ranks relative to the achievement test scores of other school districts. 2, the teacher-pupil ratio of each school in your district, but more important, teacher-pupil ratio in each and every classroom. Number 3, amount of local funds, state funds, and federal funds received by the school systems in your district and how the money is being spent. The cash balance at the beginning of the year and the cash balance at the end of the year. 4, the ranking of each school system as to the money it receives per child. 5, the amount of new money your county and city governments will receive in 1982. 6, a comparison between teacher compensation in Alabama and teacher compensation in other states within the South for the years 80 and 81. You now have the tools from which to make sound financial and sound educational judgments. I want to thank the members of the State School Board, Dr. Teague, and other State Board personnel for their initiative in providing facts that are about 40 years overdue. There must be clear and concise communication between the State School Board and the legislature. The State School Board needs to understand the financial resources of the state. The legislature needs to understand the priorities, the policies, the problems, the progress, and the funding patterns of our public schools. There is no greater responsibility one can undertake than to serve on the State School Board or a local school board. Decisions made here have a direct bearing on your child's education. Many times these decisions are difficult and oftentimes controversial. There is one acid test question that should prevail always. Is it good for the child? You appropriate almost 1/2 of our total tax revenue through the state school board. It is important that the legislature fully understand the workings of the board. Therefore, I recommend that the Speaker of the House and the Lieutenant Governor be added to the state school board. There is no doubt in my mind that our Speaker and our Lieutenant Governor, as well as future Speakers and future Lieutenant Governors, will make a valuable contribution to public education. Not only is the state school board the guiding policy and management unit for our public school systems, but also for 21 junior colleges and 28 technical colleges. Any board, no matter how capable or hardworking, would find it difficult to fulfill both responsibilities. Therefore, I may recommend that the legislature create a separate board to manage our system of two-year colleges. This should be accomplished so as to allow close communications between the new board and the state school board. You, more than anyone else, understand the politics and the economics of universities. It is impossible for our great schools to pursue a mission of excellence, a mission of quality, not quantity, unless they build on their strengths and eliminate their weaknesses. This has not been done. Therefore, I recommend that the role of the Alabama Commission of Higher Education be changed from one of coordination to one of administration, and that the commission be restructured and given the authority to carry out that role. I will propose a number of other bills. A bill to challenge the absolute absurdity of the Supreme Court decision banning prayer from public schools, to challenge comprehensively a decision that causes confusion and misunderstanding throughout the land. I suspect that Congress of the United States will be dealing rather forcibly with this issue, and it is long, long overdue. A bill to reinstate the death penalty. It is a deterrent to vicious crime, period. Several bills to strengthen law enforcement. It's time to take the handcuffs off police, sheriffs, state troopers, ABC agents, and other officers, to put the handcuffs on the criminal. A bill to authorize a bond issue for mental health. And I compliment members of the Mental Health Oversight Committee for their good work in this regard. Bill to consolidate state environmental functions into one agency. This will enhance our striking the proper balance between adequate environmental safeguards and economic well-being. I know of a number of other bills some of you are introducing, and many of them I look forward to supporting 100%. I have, in the last 20 minutes, recommended to you plain, concise, and exact measures to solve the state of Alabama's so-called financial crisis, which is a myth. Government, by and large, doesn't know what belt tightening is. The housewife does, the farmer does, the employees of Chrysler Corporation do, our retired people do, but this government is fixing to learn if you pass my proposals, and the sooner the better. Let me repeat. 1, unearmarking you bust a straitjacket that prevents you from appropriating public funds according to need. 2, go back to buying your budgeting, and you'll stop a lot of poke barrel monkey business with the budgets. Pass my budgets, and I promise you no service of major consequence will suffer, and that higher education will once again devote its attention to quality, not expansion. Now, don't forget Our city and county governments would get another $100 million of new revenue in 1982, and the great bulk of this new revenue should go to local school systems. That is our great deficiency in Alabama's tax structure. We don't give local schools the local support that they deserve in many counties and cities. Now that the federal government has followed our lead with a comprehensive hiring freeze, our own freeze will work much better, and attrition alone will help stabilize the cost of government. If you adopt realistic and competitive employee compensation policies, as I am proposing, the combination of these two disciplines will save us about $60 million during the remainder of this fiscal year and next fiscal year. This is sufficient revenue, if used wisely, to operate state government. You will have to transfer some statutory earmarked taxes to do this. If you do, we are in good shape. If you don't, I suppose you'll look for new taxes, which I'll veto, and of course, you can override my veto with just a simple majority vote. You see, distinguished senators and House members, we call ourselves Alabama's ship of state. The people back home own this boat. Their tax dollars pay for it and its upkeep. You and I are the sailors, the deckhands that run the vessel. Now, what do you think would happen if all 142 of us set sail on this big yacht that the people pay for, and some of us slipped down in the engine room of this fine boat and knocked 4 big holes in the bottom? 1, 2, 3, 4. Water would gush in. Then we'd come running back up on the deck and holler to the people out on the bank, "Hey, our boat is leaking. We are taking water. We are going down. Send us some more tax dollars so we can stay afloat." You know what I think the people have already said? Plug your holes. You're not getting another dime of new state taxes, and if you don't plug those holes, we'll get a new crew. And they are dead right. I have just identified for the second time tonight the 4 big leaks of state government and exactly how to plug those big leaks. I believe in the Alabama legislature, individually and collectively, in every one of you. In this session, as never before, have so few had so great an opportunity to do so much for so many. I, my cabinet and staff, stand ready and willing to work with you tirelessly through these ends. I thank you.
Governor Fob James' State of the State address to the Alabama legislature has come to you live from the state capitol, a public affairs presentation of WSFA TV.
My colleague Bob Ingram has joined me tonight for a brief wrap-up on Governor James' State of the State. We are running a little late into network programming. Bob, the 4 holes to be plugged, the governor named them. He says if we can't plug the boat, get a new crew.
I'd like to say this for Governor James. I've heard a lot of these State of State addresses down through the years, and so oftentimes the governor has the temptation to lay out before the legislature all the problems and offer no proposed solutions. To his credit, he came up with some solutions tonight, his idea of solutions. I have to give the man his due for that. He spelled it out pretty plain. I kept a stopwatch on him. He devoted about 10 minutes of his 34 or 5-minute speech on earmarking, and about 8 minutes to state employee reform, sweeping reforms relating to the benefits of state employees, and then another 8 minutes on education. So those are the 3 big issues for him.
Right. We'll be back. We'll be wrapping up. We'll have reaction from the Capitol. Bob will be back with an analysis tonight. All of this coming up on the 10 o'clock report. We hope you'll stay tuned and join us for more on the Governor's State of the State address tonight at 10 o'clock. Right now, we're going to go back to network programming.
Hey, Roadrunner, where I get good breakfast? A good breakfast? Hardy's biscuit. Hey, what means sieve, mix, split, roll, cut, bake, you? Oh, that means that every batch is homemade from scratch.
You see, they sift the flour,
and then they mix it,
and then they knead it, and roll it out, and cut it,
and then they bake it. But what means stew? That's what you say if you like it. You like it? Oh, boy, you!
Hardy's, best eaten in town, up and down and all around.
Nature knows what's best for you of all the things she's grown. Now nature shares her secrets in a bread called nature.
Advisors. On his way back to California, he talked about his week in Washington.
It was most not only enjoyable, but it was very heartwarming, the reception and all, and I feel that it was very fruitful, the relationships that were started and that were established on the Hill and so forth. In fact, I was kind of surprised to find out that how many things I'd done were considered unusual. I would have thought that they were a natural thing.
Reagan says that he still hasn't made any firm decisions about his cabinet. The nation's largest bank has joined the parade to the 17% prime rate level. The %1 Bank of America was among the the host of major banks today that raised its top business loan rate by 0.75%. As #7, Continental of Illinois started the ball rolling yesterday with a rate announcement that the prime should move up. It's now at its highest level since mid-May. Also on the rise are government-backed mortgage rates, now at 13%. Federal officials say that Federal Housing Administration and Veterans Administration home loans will go up 13.5% on Monday. The officials say that the move will make home buying more costly, but also more possible. When we come back, we'll take a look at the world of sports, including Phil Snow's look at high school football.
Getting your prescription filled can involve a lot of waiting and a lot of boredom. At Family Mart, we can't always eliminate the waiting because preparing your prescription carefully takes time. But when you come to Family Mart, you can drop off your prescription, then shop for groceries or hardware, small appliances or cosmetics. You won't have to twiddle your thumbs until your prescription's ready. And we're not just Whistling Dixie. Family Mart. If you think we're just another grocery store, we've got some surprises in store for you.
This is my best friend, Beauregard. We do everything together. My dad got him at the bank where he keeps his allowance. You can get one at a special price, too. Just put your allowance in a new checking or savings account, or add to savings you already have. I thought they only had money in banks, but I guess at Alabama National they have more.
We've got more for you.
Alabama National Bank of Montgomery.
Time for tonight's editorial comments from Bob Ingram. Bob?
Those of us in the media are oftentimes faulted for seeming to dwell on the bad news, seldom having anything good to say about anyone. We're accused of giving all manner of attention to the public official who misbehaves, but rarely do we commend those who do a good job. Tonight, some words of commendation for the city fathers of our good neighbor, the city of Wetumpka. Our commendation includes the previous Wetumpka City Administration as well as the present. First, some background. A number of years ago, the federal government began dispensing billions of dollars to city, county, and state governments. Much of it came under that umbrella called revenue sharing. Many Alabama cities and counties, and the state government as well, used the money to launch ambitious new programs. Office space was leased, equipment was bought, people were hired. But now comes the grim possibility of a sharp cutback in these funds. And where does that leave those governmental agencies and all their ongoing programs? Obviously, it means that the programs must be discontinued and the employees must be laid off, or you, the local taxpayers, must provide the needed money. But that will not be the case in Wetumpka. Starting with Mayor Melvin Gray and continuing with Mayor Truman Welch, Wetumpka did not yield to the temptation of using any of these federal dollars for programs or payrolls. Every cent Wetumpka received in revenue-sharing dollars went for capital outlay: a new city hall, garbage trucks, other equipment, baseball fields for the kids. All federal funding could be cut off tomorrow, and the Wetumpka city government would not skip a beat. No programs would be discontinued, no services terminated, no employees laid off. You say that this is nothing but common sense. Compared with other Alabama cities and counties, it is very uncommon common sense. Bob?
Thanks, Bob. And Phil, more tonight in addition to high school football, but some more comments about the Auburn coaching situation.
Seems we have a story every day.
Almost.
United Press International is quoting sources as saying Auburn football coach Doug Barfield has hired an attorney and decided to fight his possible ouster at the end of the season. The coach, who has 1 year remaining on his contract, told us tonight, quote, "Certainly I have an attorney, just like I have an accountant and a family doctor." Barfield, who denied published reports yesterday that he has resigned, says he doesn't anticipate needing an attorney in the matter of his contract. Quarterfinal round of the high school football playoffs tonight, and some outstanding games. A terrific battle in Greenville tonight, with Charles Henderson High of Troy edging Greenville 15-12. Dave Cody and Bill Sham were there.
Charles Henderson went up 15-0 with 2:25 left in the first half tonight when Ken Anderson raced 80 yards to the end zone with a Greenville punt. Trojan blockers formed an escort along the left sideline, and Mike Thomas picked off the last Tiger defender with a chance at catching Anderson. Anderson, a senior split end, was injured in the third quarter and did not return. Down 15-0, Greenville drove 65 yards with the second half kickoff. Tiger tailback Tom Powell sprinted the final 44 yards to the end zone on a beautiful run off right tackle. The try for 2 points no good, and Charles Henderson held a 15-6 lead. The Trojans, though, fumbled on their next possession, and after a roughing the kicker penalty against them, Greenville quarterback Harry Crum hit Russell Davis with an over-the-shoulder touchdown strike that covered 35 yards. Again, Greenville failed on the 2-point try. The Trojans had to hold the Tigers inside the 5-yard line late in the game to preserve a 15-12 win. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
Big crowd in Greenville tonight. Great high school football. Other playoff action. Stanhope Elmore still live and kicking, beating Bibb County of Centerville 24-12 tonight in Centerville. So it will be Stanhope Elmore against Troy, Charles Henderson High of Troy, in next week's semifinals. In the 2A classification, Southern Choctaw edged Headland by a score of 14-7, while Dadeville was defeating Ohatchee 16-7. That matches Southern Choctaw and Dadeville next week. McKenzie scored with 54 seconds remaining, kicked the point, and beat Frisco City 14-13 tonight. Their Class A semifinal opponent will be Notasulga after whipping Verbena 18-12 tonight. In the big school classification in 4A, Enterprise and Murphy still playing, with Enterprise out front in the fourth quarter 23-6. So it looks like it will be Enterprise against Parker of Birmingham. The Thundering Herd, who defeated Lee last week here, whipped West End tonight 34-7. The home teams will be decided on Saturday by the school principals and coaches. That's the way they determine who plays where in the playoffs. In the Christian School Championship game tonight, Grace Christian defeated Coosa Christian 20-0. This, of course, is an off week for football in Alabama, but not elsewhere. Ohio State and Michigan decide the Rose Bowl entry tomorrow. Nebraska takes on Oklahoma, the winner there to host the Orange Bowl. Here's a look at that big battle in Lincoln, Nebraska.
White is expected to use at least 4 different running backs. The top rusher is number 22, David Overstreet, who averages more than 7 yards a carry. He's rushed for over 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. The Sooners also use Stanley Wilson, Buster Rhymes, and Chet Winters, number 40. They have rushed for nearly 1,500 yards and combined to score 12 touchdowns. The top point man is the quarterback, number 1, J.C. Watts. He can throw the football, but he prefers to run with it. He has scored 13 touchdowns this football season. The Sooners will have their hands full with Nebraska. The Cornhuskers are very tough on offense and defense. The offense is led by a fine quarterback in number 11, Jeff Quinn, who has passed for over 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns. Number 29 is split end Todd Brown. On the ground, the key man is the I-back, number 12, Jarvis Redwine. In 8 games, he's rushed for nearly 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. He needs just 33 yards for that 1,000 mark. But stopping Redwine leaves openings for another big man, number 21, Roger Craig, Nebraska's top scorer, running for 15 touchdowns.
Yes, sir. AUM defeated North Georgia College 75-55 round 1 of the Valdosta basketball tournament tonight. They play Pikeville College of Kentucky for the title tomorrow night. That's after Pikeville upset the host team Valdosta tonight. And in the Carver Invitational High School tournament going on here, Selma defeated St. Jude 47-28 tonight. In girls play, Jeff Davis down Carver 64-42. The Carver boys leading Calhoun by 9 at the half in tonight's late game. Elsewhere today, Dick Hauser resigned as manager of the New York Yankees. He'd been at odds with Yankee owner George Steinbrenner since the Yankees lost the American League playoffs to Kansas City. Roland Martin, laying back in second for the first 2 days, moved to the top in today's final round of the Florida Invitational Bass Tournament at Lake Okeechobee. Martin, perhaps the best bass fisherman in the world, won $11,000. And he'll be here, I'm sure, for the Bassmasters Classic this next fall. The Alabama gang, most of them anyway, expected to be in the field for the World Classic 200 stock car race Sunday in Birmingham. The trials are tomorrow night. Race is 2:30 Sunday at the Birmingham International Speedway. And the Auburn JVs take on the Alabama JVs tomorrow afternoon, Bryant-Denny Stadium. It's a 1:30 kick. And by the way, Paul Lillen and I will be talking about that on the radio tomorrow.
You know, there's an interesting question was raised earlier this afternoon. Will we see in tomorrow's JV game between Alabama and Auburn any of the players that might get a chance to play in the real McCoy a week from tomorrow?
I would think it would be possible that perhaps some Alabama quarterbacks that could possibly be seen the following week because they have an unsettled situation. And Bear Bryant, he's not too proud to take a look at 2 or 3 and see how they perform, perhaps in the JV game with the idea of using them the following Saturday.
Might be interesting. Thanks, Phil. Have a nice weekend. We'll be back with more in a moment.
X cars, K cars, J cars, they all say they're the new cars for the world. Well, they're all a little late because Toyota has built the world's #1 selling economy car for years. And in 1981, while new emission standards have lowered the gas efficiency of many cars, Toyota gives you a new American gas champ, the 1981 Starlet. Before you buy any car in the alphabet, test drive Toyota quality at your local Toyota dealer. Get sold on the real economy cars for the world.
You gotta go to Gaylord's. Gaylord's fantastic pre-holiday sale. Men's flannel sport shirts, 2 for just $9. Entire stock of $38.99 to $79.99. Ladies' coats reduced 20%. Men's and boys' Fruit of the Loom underwear, 30% off package price. Prestone antifreeze, $3.88 a gallon. Quaker State 10W40 motor oil, 89 cents a quart. These great pages in our pocketbook just went on sale. To save the most, you gotta go to Gaylord's.
I guess a lot of people feel just a little bit nervous about going to the dentist. But dental health is an important part of health. So I feel good about taking care of my teeth and my family's. One thing that helps is my dental rider from Blue Cross and Blue Shield. It's an important part of my company's health care plan. And it makes these trips to the dentist just a little bit easier. I really feel good about that. I feel good. I feel good. I feel good.
No why Pillsbury cinnamon rolls taste so good?
There's lots of cinnamon in them.
There's lots of cinnamon in them.
Yeah.
Open your eyes to a wonderful show. Make the magic of pop and fresh dough. It's magic the way the day is beginning. Waking up to rolls with lots of cinnamon in them.
See? There's lots of cinnamon in them.
That's easy for you to say.
Make the magic of pop and fresh dough.
And that is it for tonight's 10 o'clock report of news, sports, and weather on this 21st day of the month. Thank you for watching. Dan Black will have the first news of the weekend tomorrow at 6. Right now, let's sit back and watch The Tonight Show. It's next.
From Hollywood, The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. This is Ed McMahon along with Doc Severinsen and the NBC Orchestra inviting you to join Johnny and his guests, Raquel Welch and Paul Reiner. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here